This is Risa Paris, Editor-in-Chief at Bookish Ventures and editor at Radion Media, a publisher of both fiction and nonfiction. Welcome to the second podcast of Bookish Ventures. Bookish Ventures provides information on books, authors, book marketing, and PR, as well as original writing and industry news. Please visit us at www.bookishventures.com. That's BOOKISHVENTURES.com. In this broadcast, we will talk about author William Peter Blatty, who recently died, and his mega bestseller, The Exorcist. We will also talk about exorcism and what you need to know about the subject for writing and further research and exploration. But first, we will venture into Learn a Word. The word for this podcast is raconteur. It is derived from the French raconter. It means to recount or relate in the Old French. In modern usage, it means a person who tells anecdotes in a skillful or amusing way. A raconteur is also a storyteller, a spinner of yarns, or a narrator. In The Exorcist, Blatty writes, "Finally, she thought she had seen him levitate. Perhaps. Recounting the story to someone, she invariably added, perhaps. And perhaps her mind, that untiring raconteur of illusion, had embellished the wrappings. Perhaps your grandmother is a raconteur, the weaver of family stories, or perhaps you are the raconteur, a teller of witty tales." And now on to exorcisms. It wasn't long ago that a new genre was created called theological horror. William Peter Blatty was born in 1928 and died on January 12, 2017. He is best known for his book, The Exorcist, and won an Academy Award for his screenplay of the book. He was born in New York City and attended Georgetown University and received a master's in English literature from George Washington University. He was the youngest child of Lebanese immigrants. His mother was a deeply religious Catholic woman, and his father left home when he was 6. Blatty lived in poverty and suffered rootlessness. He had 28 different addresses during his childhood. His college English degrees, while preparing him to be a writer, did not help him achieve immediate financial stability. He could not secure a job teaching and sold vacuum cleaners door to door, drove a beer truck, and worked as an airline ticket agent. Blatty joined the United States Air Force and eventually became head of the policy branch of psychological warfare. Such a job title sounds both literary and meaningless, and may crack light into a young writer's head. Literature, when done well, is psychological, and theological horror is quite psychological. The Air Force might have paved the way for The Exorcist. Blatty eventually made his way to Los Angeles after leaving the Air Force. He was drawn, like many writers, to entertainment. He began writing comic novels, which led to writing comedy films. He also collaborated on a Pink Panther movie. In 1971, Blatty wrote The Exorcist, a story of a 12-year-old girl who becomes possessed. Blatty later shared that he knew he was writing a hit. And he was right. It remained on the bestseller list for 57 consecutive weeks, and it sold over 13 million copies and was translated into multiple languages. The Exorcist also became the first horror film to be nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. It is not surprising that an author raised by an intensely religious mother would focus on and grapple with ideas of God, Satan, and possession in his writing. It is also not surprising that an American author who grew up in a country, the U.S., focused on religious matters and who was created by Puritans obsessed with God, the Bible, witches, and demonic possession, would craft a new literary genre of theological horror. It should also be noted that The Exorcist was written at the very end of Vietnam and at the closure of a tumultuous decade. The United States was grappling with its own conceptions of right and wrong and political terror. But what is surprising is the focus on the failure of science to explain behavior at a time when science was increasingly relied on to explain our world and the universe. Reagan was a 12-year-old girl with physical symptoms that defied any rational scientific explanation. She is taken to the hospital by a distraught mother and undergoes test after test. No convincing diagnosis is given. Reagan's mother, Chris, takes her back home and Reagan's condition worsens. At the beginning of the book and film, Reagan plays in the basement with a Ouija board. Her questions are answered by someone called Captain Howdy. Reagan's crime, or maybe non-crime, is loneliness and alienation. Alienation is a major theme throughout literature, and it became of significant interest to existentialists in the 20th century. Albert Camus in The Stranger establishes alienation as a condition of humanity. Even when humans are together, they are apart. Each of us must be born alone, and we must die alone. What happens in between birth and death makes us vulnerable to all kinds of connection or disconnection in an effort to draw out and drown our alienation. In our yearning, Satan walks in. Satan, in all his names and incarnations, is ancient amongst many world cultures. Possession predates Catholicism. Exorcisms occur regularly, even in this modern era, and the possessed is usually desirous of exorcism. The Catholic Church has never made a census of demonic possession. Some church officials are conservative in their estimates. One priest stated that out of 3,000 recent consultations with people, only 4 were true possessions. However, some priests disagree and reason that only an exorcism can reveal true possession. Since Blatty's novel, exorcism and demonic possession have been exceedingly popular as a form of entertainment. What do you need to know as an author to delve into this genre and do your own riff on it? Here are the most common signs of possession based on church writings and what is presented in books and movies. 1. Objects fly around the room. 2. Wallpaper peels off of walls. 3. Furniture cracks. 4. There are strange noises and rumblings. 5. The temperature tends to drop. 6. There is a distinctive stench. 7. Reflexes of the possessed become abnormal. 8. The face becomes distorted. 9. There is the opening and slamming of doors. Where does an exorcism take place? The church generally advocates the home of the possessed. When a person is surrounded by familiar things, they can more easily find their way back from possession. In some TV shows and movies, exorcisms also take place in churches, and this is also true for many real modern-day exorcisms. Demonic possession mimics many physical problems like Tourette's and psoriasis. This is because Satan possesses the body and not the soul. It is only when a person gives up the demonic body that it integrates with the damned soul. A person possessed will begin to suffer psychological attacks as their soul begins to feel the strain of Satan. There will be illnesses with no apparent cause. They will have nightmares. They will have trouble at work and in relationships. There may also be a change in their voice, an aversion to the sacred, or something will just seem off about the person. There is no cure for demonic possession other than the supernatural cure: prayer, communion with Jesus, the sacraments, potent symbols like the crucifix. An exorcism can take days depending on the will of the possessed. Liberation cannot occur without the consent of the possessed. Is demonic possession real? The answer depends on your faith or lack of faith in a single unifying God and angels being cast from heaven and roaming the earth as demons looking for a body to possess, as demons are, of course, only spirit without substance. Many would argue that possession is merely a sign of mental illness, but some who have witnessed possession and exorcism note symptoms not contained in the DSM-5 or any psychology textbook. Of course, simply because a system is not in a book does not mean it is not part of a complicated mental diagnosis. From a literary perspective and a philosophical one, the trueness of demonic possession seems less interesting than the cure for it. In The Exorcist, Regan was a lonely, alienated girl who was able to garner her mother's complete attention and the focus of two well-meaning priests who stayed with her for hours as she battled darkness. Religious symbols were potent because they signified a community of believers all clinging to light. During the exorcism, Regan's alienation was alleviated by those surrounding her, and in the crack of her bedroom wall, she may have glimpsed the light-infused outline of God. In real exorcisms, it is community, caring, and attention that truly liberate the possessed. Demonic possession may be the refuge of the lonely and lost, and choosing possession is their way of seeking help and guidance. You can only find the light by walking through the darkness. That concludes this podcast on exorcism and the exorcist. For affordable marketing and PR for your book, we recommend Love for Books at www.loveforbooks.net. And for information on books, authors, publishing, and marketing, visit www.bookishventures.com. Until next time, and to borrow from Kurt Vonnegut, and so it goes.